The wilderness can be an enchanting place, but nature's captivating beauty oftentimes make us forget her dark and unforgiving side. Hunters, and those who spend the most time in the natural world, have first-handedly witnessed this. There are secrets left unrevealed, mysteries left unsolved, and knowledge we have yet to comprehend. But each year, more people naively venture off into the wild and fall victim to supernatural occurrences, accidents, and the raw power that makes nature so revered. So whether you're on your way out to the stand, on a hike, or gathered around the campfire, here are 5 stories to remind you of the events that can unfold. Years ago, I was spotted stalking a mule deer on the Great Plains. This particular area was hilly and the grass was pretty tall, so I could see him bedded down, but not clear enough to be confident in a good shot. My rifle is dialed in to 800 yards, but my comfort range is half that, so I wanted to get closer and a bit higher up on the nearest hill to him. I'm concealing myself downwind and through the tall grass, crouch walking, crawling, and even belly crawling in some spots until I get within my comfort range. I figured the distance was good enough because it took me at least 30 minutes to get in a good enough position. He's now standing in his bedded spot, and though he wasn't on to me, he was facing my direction and I hadn't quite set up yet. Note that even if I'm downwind, I have to be careful of my movements because I'm just above his head level and he could possibly still pick me out at 411 yards. For distances like this, you want to anchor yourself low to the ground for better stability. So I'm on the ground, watching the deer for a moment when I move a little and hear rattling to the right behind me. I grew cold and turned to the source of the sound to barely see this huge rattlesnake camouflaged in the grass and within striking distance of my leg. Now I had on snake boots, but that didn't help, because he struck me in my right thigh quicker than I could think about my next move. I reacted and rolled away a little down the hill. The pain was almost immediate, and the bite felt like a fiery knife stabbing me. I don't know a whole lot about snakes, but I have heard the advice to stay calm to prevent the rapid spread of venom. I lay there, trying to collect my nerves while I reach for my phone to dial 911. I tell them my situation, and they said they were on the way. The dispatcher stayed on the phone to keep me updated, but I just remember passively listening and responding to more questions. Even if I remained calm in a physical state, my mental was running wild, reflecting on many things. One in particular was my daughter's wedding in a couple of months, and how I may not be there to walk her down the aisle. I know I had to stay on the phone with the dispatcher, but a part of me wanted to hang up and call my daughter to let her know many things in my possible short time. Things like I love her, and I'm so proud of her, and that she will have a wonderful family and a full life. Of course, I didn't do that, because even if it felt like forever, rescue arrived by helicopter somewhere within 20 minutes. They immediately started loading and treating me as I was airlifted to the nearest hospital. To put it short, I didn't have to have my leg amputated, just very swollen and sore for a few weeks afterwards. I walked with a bit of a limp for a while, but fully recovered in time for my daughter's big day. I don't know what that mule deer must have thought if he was watching the whole thing. All I know is that we both escaped with our lives that day. I'm a deer hunter who live in a medium-sized town here in Georgia in a relatively quiet neighborhood. It's a no-outlet street with 7 other houses, which one house, the one that sits offset and across from mine, had been up for sale since summer of 2018 until someone finally bought it about a year later. A single woman that looks to be in her late 30s. Slim build. She wasn't ugly, just crazy, and I'm about to tell you just how much. Once she was settled in, we both so happened to be outside one weekend, so I decided to go over and formally introduce myself. You know, the whole Southern hospitality thing. She said she was from LA and moved here for work, and though she would rather be closer to Atlanta, it was cheaper in the rural areas and she doesn't mind being around nature. Now there's 13 acres of woods surrounding the back of the houses that aren't fenced off, so deer would come into the street and into some of the yards from time to time, especially at Jeff's house towards the end of the street, who has a garden out back. Not to forget the raccoons raiding the trash and the coyotes that howl, so she would definitely be getting what she asked for. We didn't talk long, and it seemed like a normal first greeting. It wasn't until about the third contact, a month and some weeks later, that things started to take a turn. I come home from work one evening, go to check my mailbox, and I'll refer to her as Karen, is sitting on her porch. I greeted her and she smiled and waved me to come over as she too walked to the edge of her yard. I crossed the street and we made small talk for a minute, but then she straight up asked if I hunt. Now there isn't anything obvious around my house that would indicate that I do. Even my gear I keep in the garage, but I don't bring it out until closer to season, which was 3 months away. I never told her, even when I brought up the deer that come out, but I said yes, and she told me she figured I did because of the one decal on my truck and the camo sweats I wore out of the house that day. Then she smoothly transitioned into how she used to be interested in that stuff, then found out how intelligent animals are, so she became vegan in the whole 9 yards. I personally don't care what people's dietary choices are. I mean, that's one less person I have to compete with for the food I like. Jeff, who has a garden, is vegetarian, and he gives me and the other neighbors the extra from his harvest when he can. She proceeded to tell me that she was having a house party in another week and invited me to come. I said I'd see about it, and we ended things there. The day comes, and it's actually on one of my off days. Now I like to sleep in on my off days, so I was just waking up when they started to play music at about 1 p.m. It was a fair turnout. A couple of people from, let's just say, various different subcultures of society attended. Even a chicken that a lanky guy with blue spiky hair was holding like a baby. Yeah, I could definitely tell this was not my crowd of people to hang around. Even if I didn't have anything that needed to be done that day, I decided I was going to leave and go find some business until the party was over. As I'm getting ready, I hear loud singing and peer out of the window again to now see the people in a circle on the front lawn singing some weird kumbaya song I've never heard before. Now Karen has a backyard, like everyone else, so why she decided to stay in the front and party, well, I have my theory. I'm ready now, and walking to my truck when I hear Karen loudly call my name while smiling and waving. She yells, "You coming?" I make up some BS lie about why I can't and leave. As I'm driving down the street, I hear someone in the group yelling out, "Let them live." I of course ignored it and didn't return home until later that night. When I got back, the party was over, but there was something on my porch with a note saying, "Sad you missed the party. Here are some vegan strawberry shortbread cookies." They did look good, and at any other time I would have accepted this as a kind gesture, but given the recent events, I was kind of weirded out by Karen and her crowd that I ended up just throwing them in the trash. The next time I encountered her, she asked about them, and I just told her they were good, but made sure to keep the conversations brief from then on. For a minute, she continued to leave me vegan treats here and there until I politely rejected. Nothing much happened between then and hunting season, just small weird things like when I would leave for work, she would sit on her porch early mornings pretending to do stuff, or when I pretended not to see her so I wouldn't have to speak, she would stand in her front yard looking at the grass for no apparent reason, then watch me as I drive off. One day I came home and there was a sign in her yard, and on it, our animals and humans joined in a circle. In the middle, it read, "We are sentient beings." Just a general statement, but I still feel it was directed at me. But hang on to your horses, because the real ride is about to begin. It's September, and 3 weeks into early bow season. I'm more of a rifle hunter, but still take advantage of what I can since rifle is mid-October. I had been out a couple of times prior, but one afternoon on a day I had taken off to go with a buddy on some private land, I discovered my driver rear tire is flat. It was fine when I was putting things in my truck yesterday, but still examine it for possible cause. Mind you, these are some pretty durable tires designed for 4x4 off-road vehicles. They don't take damage easily. Well, there's a small but deep cut on the side. I'm thinking WTF and try to remember what I had done that possibly caused this. Then I thought about Karen. Now, I had no proof it was absolutely her, but given the circumstances, it was a high possibility. My buddy offered to come get me, but I had to work the next day and needed to get this fixed today, so I had to pass on the hunt. It goes without saying that I was upset because I not only wasted time, but now money on an expensive new tire. I got the idea to put up 2 trail cameras I hadn't put out yet as a cheap means of security cameras. They weren't the cellular kind, but still will serve as an insight to what's going on around my house. I thought I hid them well. Apparently not, because about a week later, both turned up missing, and again, I have no proof of my suspect. I don't know if it qualifies as hunter harassment because I wasn't in the act of hunting, but the best I could do was file a police report about the strange occurrences and supplement it any time something happened. Karen, on the other hand, would act normal and friendly when I see her. Even if I suspected her, I played it cool because I didn't want to give her the satisfaction that it bothered me, and I couldn't just accuse someone without proof. Still, nothing like this has ever happened in my 7 years of living here. Now, I'm usually a low-conflict guy that's easy to get along with, but I got the idea to be petty and do little things that would annoy her without vandalizing her property too. I would set up my deer decoy target in the front yard and practice archery. Come opening day of gun season, I got a decent buck, and my buddy downed a doe. Instead of taking them to a processor, I got a hitch hoist that connects to the back of the truck. We brought them back to my house to skin and quarter them out ourselves in the front yard while having a private party. Beers and music, even a few other hunting buddies showed up after their hunt. This must have sent her on edge because Karen left the house looking visibly upset. I must admit the karma was sweet. One of my buddies joked to throw the head of the doe on her front porch, but I thought that would be too much, if not obvious revenge. Jeff rolled by at some point to congratulate the harvest. Then, he casually brought up that he was coming home early one evening to see Karen shooing away some deer that had come into my yard. Now, I don't like getting others involved in my conflicts, but I told him about the other incidents to none he witnessed. I actually continued this throughout the season, skinning and cleaning 2 others. Karen intentionally avoided me, as she should have, from the beginning. But when I came home one day, a note written in red that said, "I hope demons hunt and gut you and others like you for all eternity." This would be the only piece of hard evidence I possibly had on her, and I supplemented it too. The next time I saw Karen, I told her I have witnesses and would press charges if I find that she's been on my property again. She cussed me out, and I said some choice words back, but that was that. It wasn't long before that goofy sign in her yard was replaced with a for sale sign, and about 4 months later, she was out of there. I really don't understand people's self-righteousness and need to dictate others' personal choices. It's people like Karen who believe they are connected to nature, but in truth are the furthest from it. I don't care where she went, but at least she's out of my neck of the woods. I'm a Black or African American woman. That piece of information is relevant for the story. I grew up in a relatively peaceful, somewhat suburban neighborhood that has 2 big lakes that I love to go down to not only fish but hang out. According to my mama, when she purchased the house back in the 70s, the area was predominantly white, but through the years became mostly ethnic with the exception of this one street that sits on the lake. When riding my bike through as a kid, I would see mainly a lot of elderly whites, so I guess the move wasn't worth it to them. There was this one house in particular that didn't hold up to the appearance of the rest, and it would always give me an uneasy vibe. It wasn't exactly trashy, but a house is usually the reflection of whoever lives there. Dull, angry, and lonely. Anyway, as a young adult, I went back to my childhood home to visit my mama after moving away to the state's capital for college. I did the usual activities I enjoyed as a kid to, relive the memories. It's a nice day, and I'm at the lake with my dog, not fishing this time, but listening to music and reflecting on things, when I notice a simple John boat making its way over to two other black guys on the opposite side. They had been there for a minute fishing. I go back to minding my business when I hear shouting from across the lake. It's the two black guys and a white guy in the boat. They were far away, but still close enough for me to hear that it sounded like they were having maybe an argument of a sort. Maybe because I had headphones on. Aggressive or friendly debate, I didn't know, and I kinda didn't care. Knowing guys, I thought it may have been about a sports team or something, and I again go back to minding my own business. After a minute, I notice the two guys pack up and start to leave, and the man in the boat steered away. Okay, I still don't care, minding my own business. Then, as the men are driving off, the boat is heading my way. Now, I don't have a reason to fret at this moment, but I didn't feel like being social either. Still, I stood there next to the lake with my dog, headphones still on and world music playing in my ears when the guy in the boat approaches. When he is near enough, I could see him clearer. White male, in his 60s, gray beard, yellow shades, scrawny build, no shirt, and a peg leg. Yes, a peg leg. I just mindlessly and politely asked, "Catching anything?" Just to strike up a quick, meaningless hey goodbye combo. I didn't even take my headphones off, but through a soft spot in the music, I heard the guy say, "I ain't doing no fishing. I come to run your black ass out of here." Now I take my headphones off and hear the guy go on a complete racist rant. I will leave his words to your imagination, but complete foul and demonic words, ranging from how he would have assaulted me back in the day to how true whites are going to nail Obama to the jail wall. This was back sometime 2010, 2011, a time I wasn't keen on politics, so I had no idea what he was talking about. But I won't deny that I threw some choice words myself in the heat of the moment. That was before noticing him constantly reaching down beside him, pulling up and putting down an object in the boat. He seemed like he was fighting with himself on whether to do something or not. Then he lifts it high enough that I could see. It was a double-barrel sawed-off shotgun. I froze for a second, but my body instinctively starts moving away. Not turning my back on the guy, I was more angry than scared due to the adrenaline, but I stayed silent and gathered my dog as he continued his erratic rant. I told the operator everything, and they said they'd send someone out. Honestly, I didn't expect the outcome. Within about 45 minutes, I hear a siren and one squad car zooming through the neighborhood past me in the lake, followed by several other sirens until there was a whole unit of police and SWAT team blocking off the street I told you about earlier. At that house was a standoff. The police and SWAT team had guns drawn and a negotiator at the door. Naturally, neighbors and bystanders tuned in to the drama that took place for a good minute until eventually they came out with the guy in handcuffs. A peaceful resolution. But don't think that was all just for me. I was just the straw that broke the camel's back. According to the police, this guy had been on their radar for a while. Neighbors were reporting his strange behaviors, such as harassment, in addition to getting in his boat late at night and rowing over to the other side of the lake, disappearing into the woods for hours. Aside from harassment, those things in itself is odd, but not illegal. What is what he was doing. The thing that tipped them were the strange smells that would come from the other side. There is a gravel road over there, but because it's so far off, no one ever really goes over there. Earlier that day, I saw a man walking two dogs on the gravel road. Turns out he was an investigator, and in his reports said that the man had built a small shed in the woods that contained so much cocaine and other substances that if ignited, it could definitely cause an explosion. Our calls came in around the same time. Equipment to make the stuff was sieged too. That explains everything. The smells were him cooking up the drugs, and him scaring people off was his attempt at protecting his operation and keeping it secret. The drugs wasn't an influence on his racism, though. When talking with one of his neighbors during the standoff, he explained that the guy was indeed a former white knight and did those things back in the day. He said that because of his stubborn ways and failure to adapt to the changing times, his wife divorced him and son wants nothing to do with him. Had a heated argument with him years prior in the front yard and hasn't been back to the house since. So now he live out his days, cold, angry, and lonely. And like I said before, his house reflected that. I don't know what charges that guy was slapped with, but it must not have been strong enough. About a year later, I saw him in his front yard when driving by. He looked to be on house arrest, but still, he was somewhat free. After the ordeal, that night when my nerves had settled, I sat in my bed in the dark when the grim reality of how that could have been my last day set in. It hits me harder when a year or so later, the news of Trayvon Martin shook the nation in the same concept. Black person minding their business when an erratic white person shows up to end their life. I didn't grow up in the era of segregation and civil rights, but from the stories, then living it, put into perspective of what my folks went through back in the day, and on a constant. This experience hasn't made me bitter, though. There are buttholes in every race, and I still treat everyone with respect and live by the principle of, I give you what you give me. In the end, I just want to be around good people. It was the second day of deer season, and I was eager to hunt this particular area of public land because I got a lot of great wildlife activity on trail camera. Deer, turkey, small game, even coyotes. It seemed promising, but unfortunately, I wasn't the only hunter in the area that day. Or so I thought. After arriving mid-afternoon, I saw a guy parked a little ways away off the side of the road near a winding curve. He didn't see me, or at least he didn't care. Instead, he gathered his bow off the top of his gray pickup truck that looked to be an old Ford Ranger and started for the location I had planned to hunt. I know there are no such thing as spots on public land, but it is discouraging when you put in the work to find the location, only to know someone else is there too. So feeling like a kid that wanted to get there first, I hurried my things to head in. I go in on the path closest to me just moments afterwards. Eventually our paths would connect in a lowercase h shape about 100 yards in, and the land was pretty well managed to where you could almost see clear through the woods. I couldn't spot him, but as I rounded the corner, I caught a small glimpse of movement entering the spot I wanted to. It's also where I had my trail camera still hanging. I felt crushed that I possibly wouldn't get to hunt that spot. I stood a distance away, conflicted on if I should speed scout another location or at least go and ask if he was actually planning to hunt there. Maybe he was just using it as an access point. I head on, and thankfully, after getting to the area, he wasn't around. I didn't know where he went. I just assumed he went further into the woods. Crazy part is that this guy was moving pretty fast to be so stealthy. I never heard anything from his movements. Of course, there is the distance, but not even so much as a stick crack. I took down my trail camera and set up my climber. When I tied the rope onto my bow, I realized I left my freaking release at the truck. Usually I keep it attached to my bow, but that morning I got a couple of practice shots in and got sidetracked with several other things, so somewhere in between forgot to reattach it. I was annoyed with myself, but luckily I had time to spare. At the small parking across the road, there was another hunter getting ready at his vehicle near mine. I look and listen for approaching vehicles coming from around the blind corner before crossing. The speed limit is 45, but still, people be flying down this back road like it says 70. When I looked in the direction where the other hunter from earlier had parked, he was gone. No truck in sight. I thought to myself, WTF, and proceeded to cross. I greeted the guy and he did the same, followed by a little small talk. He said this area indeed offers great hunting opportunity because it also borders a wildlife refuge. Deer cross the boundaries when the rest of the land is pressured. I said something along the lines of, "That's why I picked it. I was kinda hoping no one else would figure that out," I said jokingly, but still a little confused about the matter. I casually brought up the other hunter. I continued on to say, "I saw a guy in a gray pickup truck on the corner not too long ago. He went in a little before me towards my area, but then I came back because I forgot my release, but he ain't over there no more. I don't know where he went. That was at least 45 minutes ago." The guy casually said no one was there when he arrived, and that was about 20 minutes ago. Plus, he stayed in his truck to finish a smoke. He mentioned that he lives about 20 minutes away and hunts here ever so often. He also continued to say that a few years back, there was a guy struck by a car coming around that curve. He only knew about it because he had parked near the same curve when a game warden pulled over to check his license and advised him to park further back, pretty much where we are. Hearing this sent a chill down my spine and me questioning my sanity. I didn't press the matter, but closed out the conversation and hurried back to the spot. For the rest of the evening, it was kind of hard to just relax and enjoy the hunt. I listened for every sound and movement in the woods, and I'm not talking about for animals. I didn't stay till last light either. I packed up at the ass crack of dusk. I spooked some deer on the way out, but whatever. Something else spooked me more. It's been 2 years now, and I haven't been back to that area, but I do hunt a little down the road from it. Nor have I heard anything else of it since. I hunt a farm in Ohio with my friend every year. Now I'm from out of town, so I don't have time to scout the farm, but my friend, who knows the owner and lives 2 hours away, can ever so often, so I mainly hunt the areas he map out. Of course, it's a rural area with ag fields and other spots that make perfect whitetail habitat. I'm only in town for a couple of days during the rut and plan to hunt the weekend. My friend couldn't join me the first day due to work and told me to go on. He'll catch up with me on the next. I do my usual routine the morning of and headed into the woods to get settled in. Well, everything was going smooth and great, up until a really nice buck came into my range with ease and offered a beautiful broadside shot. He ran the short distance across the field and disappeared into the tree line, leaving his trail painted in red. Though I couldn't see him from my stand, he couldn't have gone much further. Even so, I still wait a moment to track, but text my friend and wife in the meantime. I get on the trail, and it's good for a moment. Then it starts to get a little faint. But I eventually pick back up the trail, which led to a thicket of young trees and a tangled up mess of briars and other vines. I proceeded, but could see my deer about 20 more yards in, now belly up against a few of the small trees. But turns out, he wouldn't be the only body recovered from that spot. As I'm making my way through, I see a pile of dried up bones just visible under the forest debris. I think nothing of it at first. It's common to come across animal carcasses in the woods. I just like to be curious and check them out sometime to see what died. I got close enough to see a visible rib cage, but immediately realized the shape was not that of a deer or other large animals. I moved a little more of the leaves and pulled it up a bit from the spot, but jumped back upon revealing the shoulder blade and arm bones. Once I uncovered the bottom, there was no denying it. The remains of a person. Internally, I'm freaking out, but immediately dialed my friend to tell him. I called him first because I knew I probably wouldn't be able to get off the phone after dialing 911. He let the owner know, and he too came out a little before the police and investigators. I led them to the area and watched them work. I collect my deer somewhere in between time, but during that time, I noticed when they pulled the remains that there was no skull. Not because it was found separate. It wasn't found at all. The logical answer was that an animal carried it away, but how does that explain the hands and feet? Investigators say they were removed to prevent identification, so it was clear. This was a murder case. They told the owner they would be in contact if they needed anything else. You know, I've always heard that hunters help solve a lot of missing person cases, which makes sense because we're out here in the woods more than the average person and stray off the beaten trails. Just never thought I'd be a part of that number. I kept an eye out for a news story or something, but don't think anybody ran one. You would think something like this is newsworthy, but I guess murder happens so often that there's only so much they can cover. I'm just glad I was a part of helping the victim and their family get one step closer to justice.